Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline as part of our annual college football tradition is Trevor Matich of ESPN, national champion at BYU, college football insider, all-around good man. It is a Matich Monday. Trevor, how was the opening weekend of college football?
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, big matchups, ranked versus ranked, Notre Dame, Michigan, LSU, Miami, Washington, Auburn. And then to cap it off with the way BYU played against Arizona, man, I went to sleep more satisfied with any college football weekend than I can remember.
Yeah, I had a great Sunday. I think we all did, right? Like it was just nice. Walked out of the building at like 1 a.m. here. It was just glorious. It really was. What impressed you the most with BYU in the win over Arizona?
How physical their defense was. The Heisman candidate, Khalil Tate, is a terrific, legitimate player. I mean, he's really good quarterback for Arizona. And he lit up everybody in the Pac-12 last year, just everybody. So now he's coached by the guy who coached Johnny Manziel to the Heisman Trophy at Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin. And BYU held him to just 10 yards, 14 yards rushing with a long of 10. In other words, the longest run he had was 10 yards. And I think that really speaks to two things. One is how physical the defensive line was up front to keep there from being big openings for him to squeeze through, and to how much they've improved the speed in the back end. You know, they moved Zane Anderson, safety, up to linebacker. They moved both starting corners from last year over to safety. They got new corners in there that can run. And I think that the physicality and the speed of the defense really had a legitimate test in limiting Khalil Tate on the ground, and they passed it with flying colors.
Kevin Sumlin clearly wanted to throw the ball with Khalil Tate. How much of what Arizona did and struggled with is on play calling compared to just BYU's defensive prowess?
Well, I think that they could have and should have run Tate more, give him more opportunities. In that Heisman Trophy year at Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin wanted Johnny Manziel, to run at least a little bit of the offense. But Manziel wouldn't have it. He was going to do what he was going to do, and that was it. Matter of fact, I don't think he could tell you three things that were in the offense. He just sort of knew, hey, this is a pass play, this is a run play. And he won the Heisman. Unfortunately, he kept that attitude in the NFL, thought that he'd be the only NFL quarterback in history to go to the Pro Bowl, completely abandoning the concept of preparation, right? So Khalil Tate, unfortunately for Arizona in this game, was more coachable than Johnny Manziel. And so he stayed with the game plan, and I thought their game plan should have included more runs. But keep this in mind. He did have 8 opportunities. Now, some of those, you talk about pressure in the pocket and sacks and all that. But he had 8 opportunities. And in those opportunities, the best he could do was a 10-yard gain. That was the best he could do. This is after last year. He was Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year like 4 or 5 weeks in a row because nobody in the Pac-12 during that stretch could put a hand on him when he did break out. In 8 opportunities, BYU's defense held him in check, and I think that still is to the credit of the Cougars.
I think the real MVP on Saturday was the offensive line for BYU. A lot of discussion about losing 3 seniors, 106 starts. But that O-line, led by offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes and Ryan Pugh, the offensive line coach, they were impressive. What did you think?
They were physical. I mean, and you could see in their eyes their belief as the game wore on. They had that look that, hey, we can do this. We are better than those guys across the line. Let us pound them. Let us wear them down. And as that occurred, as the game wore on, you could see more and more the sheer joy in physical domination in the eyes of the BYU offensive linemen. And I really liked that they've established that as an identity. When you look at their coaching staff, the offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, was the offensive line coach at Auburn during their 2010 national championship run. His starting center was BYU's offensive line coach today, Ryan Pugh. Pugh was a 3-time All-SEC center at their offensive lineman at Auburn, Remington Award finalist, and earned All-America honors there. So you've got SEC mentality with success at a high level. in Provo, Utah, coaching this offensive line and this BYU offense. And so it is clear that what they want to do is play to BYU's biggest single recruiting advantage. And that is they've always been able to get big, powerful offensive linemen that can protect the passer and can road grade on the run. Wisconsin's the same way. You can say what you want about their ability to recruit speed, but Wisconsin, they can always recruit big, thick-ankled offensive linemen. Well, that's what BYU has. And right now with this coaching staff, they've opened up in game one featuring that, and I think it's great.
College football insider Trevor Matich back for another Matich Monday. Trevor, early in the third quarter, there was a momentum-shifting play, and I was thinking specifically about you and what you were thinking about when you watched Dylan Collie come back, attack a ball while he's being tackled to the ground, and come up with a catch on 3rd and 12 and allow BYU's drive to continue while the Cougars still trailed 10-7. What did you see on the play made by Dylan Collie?
I saw a tone setter. Collie went straight up the field, then turned around and came back. The ball came in a little high. Collie went up for it. The defender actually hit him in the back as he tried to come over to disrupt the pass before the ball arrived. It should have been defensive pass interference. But instead of crying about it, Collie stayed with the play. He stayed with the fight, and he ended up making that reception. Well, a play or two later, what happens? But they throw a vertical touchdown pass about 24 yards to tight end Matt Bushman. And that kind of broke things loose from a standpoint of the passing game, but it wasn't the catch that Collie made. It was the fight that Collie showed in making that catch. That's something I've been wanting to see from this wide receivers group for a while.
That third quarter is where BYU won the game. They had to make stops and get a first down in the fourth, but BYU comes out after passing for 72 yards in the first half. Tanner Mangum starts 9 for 9, and BYU has 3 touchdown drives and gets 2 3-and-outs. What was the most impressive part of that third quarter to you?
It was how the play calling gave them a chance. You never really know as a play caller what you guys can do with your scheme in a game until you're in the game. And so what ended up happening was at halftime, the receivers had as many carries as they did catches, the wide receivers. They were trying to get the ball to the wide receivers in a way that it would actually work. Now, part of that was quarterback, part of that was receivers. But I think as you went into the third quarter, you saw Jeff Grimes as the play caller pick and choose now the plays that were working. How do we get the ball into our playmakers' hands in the ways that they succeeded at the most in the first half? So you saw more carries by the receivers. You saw more short passes to the receivers, which drew the defense up, and then, bam, they'd throw vertical. And it was those vertical plays that really broke it open. But while they were doing all that, they stayed faithful to pounding the run. That has a cumulative effect, and there's you can't be stubborn and pound it into a brick wall all the time if it's just not working. But the temptation for coaches is to throw it too much if you're only gaining 2 yards, 3 yards, 4, 3 early in the game. The fact that they stayed with the run allowed BYU's offensive line to wear down that front seven of Arizona, and that's another big reason why it started to break loose for the Cougars in the third quarter.
ESPN's Trevor Matich on BYU Sports Nation. The Cougars end Arizona's 17 consecutive home opening win streak with that 28-23 victory in Tucson. So, Trevor, how do your expectations for what BYU will or can do this season change?
You know, they really haven't changed. I expected the defensive line to be just beastly, and they were. I expected the back seven to be fast, and they were. I expected the running game to be really solid, and it was. And I expected the wide receivers to be a work in progress along with the quarterback, the passing game, and it was. So I see reasons for hope. I see that Collie catch. I see the vertical throw to Bushman for that touchdown. I see them improving the confidence of Tanner Mangum, because Mangum missed some throws, but he made some nice ones. And as he figures out the best way to have the best chemistry with those receivers, that's where things will improve. So, yeah, my expectations haven't really changed much, but my hope has changed because I think the passing game has a chance to be better than I thought it would be. But, again, this depends on the wide receivers fight and the tight ends getting more involved.
And in terms of wins and losses, Vegas had BYU as an 11.5-point dog, and we both had this as a probable loss. Now this changes things. I don't think whether BYU makes a bowl game or not is in question. I think it's a matter of BYU probably getting to 7 or 8 wins at this point. What do you think?
I wouldn't say that yet because
come on, Trevor.
Some of the teams that are penciled in as wins are going to be fights. Utah State threw the ball really well and almost beat Michigan State in East Lansing. Northern Illinois has one of the best defenses in the group of 5. Boise State is one of the 2 best teams in the group of 5. They're at UMass, and UMass beat them last year. So, I mean, these games are all going to be fights. But I think that I stand by what I said last week, that 7 wins would be great. 8 wins, I'd nominate Coach Tataki for Coach of the Year. They still have a really rough schedule. But if they beat Cal next week, then I think it's a really good chance to fight their way through 7 and possibly get to 8. I think but beating Cal next week is key.
Let's focus in on the Bears. They took on North Carolina. What did you think of what they did, and what type of team is coming to Provo as BYU attempts to get to 2-0 this season?
Well, ESPN's FPI predictor, Football Power Index, gives BYU a 29% chance of beating Cal. You know, they give Cal a 71% chance of winning that game next week. I think this is a BYU win. Yep, that's FPI. I think it's a BYU win. The reason is that Cal beat North Carolina in Berkeley by a touchdown last week, and but they should have beat them by more. Cal had no turnovers. North Carolina had 4 turnovers, one of which was a pick 6 that was the margin of victory. And Cal didn't throw the ball well. They didn't run the ball well. It's just that North Carolina self-destructed. And even though North Carolina couldn't throw either, they ran the ball pretty well. So I think that if Cal doesn't make a huge turnaround right off the bat, the weakness of their defense is inexperience in the front 7. And if BYU's offensive line can take over early in this game and make them stay on the field at altitude, then I think BYU has a chance to really take this thing over on the ground in the second half. I'm not terribly worried about Cal's offense right now. They have some very good receivers, but the quarterbacks haven't shown. They play 3 quarterbacks. Quarterbacks haven't shown that they've been able to get the ball to them. So if you just look at one thing and one thing only, and that is the running game of BYU against an inexperienced front 7 of Cal, man, that to me tells me that 29% chance of winning is way too low. And I'm actually picking a win on this one.
Well, you're not alone. I think BYU opened up as a 2-point favorite against Cal. So the folks in the desert apparently liked what they saw from what BYU did in the Arizona desert. Trevor, it's great to talk to you.
Don't tell the FBI computer. Don't tell the FBI computer.
I don't dare tell a computer what to do.
Great to talk to you as always, my friend, and look forward to doing it again soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
Trevor Matich on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.